Episode 145 of Australia's #1 marketing show. Listen in as I have a chat to an average guy from a very small town trying to be different, and he's succeeding big time.
Welcome to the Small Business Big Marketing Show, where successful small business owners share their secrets to take your marketing to the next level. Now here's your host, Tim Reid.
G'day everyone, and welcome back to the Small Business Big Marketing Show. I am your host, Timbo Reid, but you, so much more importantly, are a motivated small business owner who is there to crank out some great marketing to build your business, your baby. And that's what we do right here. We help identify great marketing ideas that are going to do that. And this episode is absolutely no exception. Stay tuned for a really good interview. Hey, we are also brought to you by the very good folk at Net Registry. So in the scheme of marketing, if there is anything online that you need sorted, from domain name identification and registration to website hosting, design and development, to pay-per-click advertising, to SEO, also known as getting found on Google, all that stuff can be sorted out by the guys at Net Registry. That's what they do. They're very good at it. So whilst you are very good at running your business, leave the online marketing of your business to the folks at Net Registry. You can check them out at netregistry.com.au. Tell them Timbo sent you. They will give you a little bit of extra love, a little bit extra marketing love. Okay, so what do we got today? I have got this fellow, Charles Badenack. He is from the Shadforth Financial Group, and he is cranking out some amazingly good content marketing and using social media very cleverly. So we've got Charles. He's sharing some marketing gold. I'm going to do a bit of a wrap up after that interview of some things that I learned from that interview. I'm also going to give you a bit of a forum update in terms of some of the topics that are being discussed in the Small Business Big Marketing Forum, because there are lots and very interesting stuff there. Lots of really good, meaty, juicy marketing discussion happening. And I also want to welcome all the solopreneurs from the Flying Solo community who I know listen in tentatively each week to the Small Business Big Marketing Show. So first of all, let's get stuck into this fellow Charles, because I spoke at this conference last week in Sydney called Social Media Down Under, which is kind of interesting that I'm speaking at a conference like that. When my first slide opened up, I think the first slide said, I hate social media, but I then kind of backed off a bit. But anyway, well, I was there to have a bit of a chat about social media and content marketing. So was Charles. Now, Charles is a financial advisor and partner in a business down on a little island off Australia's mainland, it's also a state of Australia. I'll get into trouble here, called Tasmania. He's in Hobart, but I'm doing this for overseas listeners to kind of put some geography around it. But Charles is down there. He's running a very good little financial advisory business along with his business partners. He was there to speak about at the conference how he uses content marketing to build his business and, in fact, to grow his personal brand. And he shares some absolute gold. When I heard him speak last week, I just thought, I've got to get you on the show, Charles, and that's exactly what we are doing today. We cover in this interview his entire approach to content marketing, from writing books to creating videos on a regular basis to blogging, as well as how it's developed a bit of a speaking career for him. And then we tackle each of the social media channels, of which he's using about 5 or 6 to get the message out there as well. And Charles explains not only exactly why he does it, but he explains how he does it, the how-tos. We love the how-tos. So he goes into deep detail about, for example, how he gets those videos out on an ongoing basis without spending a lot of dough either. And he talks about the other forms as well. So great interview. I just want to warn you, the quality of the audio, it was a bit hit and miss. The old Skype between Victoria and Tasmania just wasn't living up to its normal brilliant self. So we dropped out a couple of times and I needed to pick up the conversation, and whether it stitches together beautifully, I don't know, but I promise you it will make sense. Now, I also am going to leave some examples of Charles's videos, blogs, etc. in the show notes. So go to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com if you want to see some of the work Charles is producing from a content marketing point of view. It's really worth looking at. So without further ado, here is Charles Badenak from Shadforth's Financial Group down in Tassie. Enjoy it, and I'll be back afterwards with a wrap-up and some key learnings. Charles Badenak from Shadforth's Financial Group, welcome to Small Business Big Marketing.
Thanks for having me along, Tim.
Mate, it was an absolute pleasure. Now, I enjoyed presenting at a conference with you last week, so much so in terms of what you had to say that I just thought this was an incredibly important interview to do and share with my listeners. So thanks for coming on board. Before we get stuck into exactly what you do, Charles, what's your superpower?
I have a passion for helping people in whatever I do, and I don't like to leave anything on the table. So I like to give everything 110%, really.
So, well, that's really interesting because that plays into the fact that you have embraced content marketing, and you might not even call it content marketing, but that's what us marketers call it, what you do. You've embraced that and you willingly give away your knowledge.
Well, I think it's important to share. And at the end of the day, if we can create a better value for all the people out there, I think that's an important outcome for all professional services.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing when I do talk to a group of small business owners, there'll always be one, two, or more in the audience who'll say, but, that's my knowledge. That's my IP. What if I share all that and, don't get paid for it? There's a real fear around that.
Oh, very much so. But I certainly think the social media is breaking down some of those barriers I've met through the social media. We've managed to share lots of information, which has been productive for all parties.
Well, listen, it's a bigger conversation than social media. I want to know, let's start by telling us, where'd the idea of creating content come from for you?
I moved into financial services about 12 years ago, and it was a pretty good time through to about 2007. Salaries were rising, all our investments were going up, but the GFC really hit us like a train wreck, really. We had 107 staff here in Tasmania, and at the time we now got around 52. And at the time I always thought I delivered high-quality financial advice and thought I was ticking along okay. But then it sort of hit me. It was one of those sort of watershed moments where I realised I was doing the same thing as everyone else.
Which was?
Just giving financial advice sitting in my office.
Yeah, right.
And so it was like if you drive the same car in the same lane at the same speed as everyone else, you'll get the same result. So I made a decision to be different. Bit of an early midlife crisis, Tim. And the first part of that process was to write a book, which took a couple of years. It was on the bucket list. I didn't expect to get to it when I did, but so I got through that, ended up having it published and started using the social media as the main tool for promoting that book. So I started off with a Facebook page. I thought I needed a lot of likes, so I engaged someone through freelancer.com and bought 5,000 likes from a page, which was probably the worst mistake I've ever made. But I've made a few. But
well, tell us about that. Hang on, you're racing ahead. You've already dropped a couple of nuggets here. So let's first. I want to understand. I mean, you don't just go, I'm going to write a book, and you write a book. So I want to understand that. Let's just cover off that buying the 5,000 likes. How did that negatively impact you? You paid a pittance for them, I'm sure, by some bloke somewhere in the world.
Cost me $15 actually. Yeah, Tim, it's a very expensive investment.
Yeah. Yeah, you still call it an investment, do you? I'd call that an expense. Why did you deem those 5,000 Facebook likes as a negative?
Well, they weren't engaged followers, or raving fans, as I like to now put it.
Yeah.
They were really just faces in a crowd. It was like machine gun advertising, really, and it really. It was a lesson, and certainly I've moved on a lot from that. Mind you, that was sort of near 4 or 5 years ago. So.
Yeah. Okay. So, just tell me, because my next question was going to be about your first piece of content. I didn't realise that your very first piece of content was a book. It was on your bucket list. It was something you'd kind of obviously had simmering in the back of your mind. Was it how big a job was it?
Well, it was a pretty big job. It was a book that was nearly 90,000 words, but I actually broke it down. So over the sort of preceding 7 or 8 years, people would come and see you, and the same issues would arise time and time again. So I wanted to write this book, which was really a blueprint in terms of some of the decisions people needed to make to achieve financial independence. So I actually broke it down into chapters, then sub-chapters, then headings, and and worked through it over a probably was sort of 18-month, 2-year period. I became a little bit obsessive with it, so I'd get up at 5:30 in the morning and do a couple of hours before work, try and squeeze an hour in the middle of the day at work and a couple of hours at night. So I was certainly keen to fast track the process. And when I finished each chapter, I actually engaged a university lecturer here to proofread the chapters. So she'd do that. Then when I'd finished it, I wondered what to do next. So I actually went to the Australian Publishing Association, and they've got a book, I think it's around $60, which lists all the publishers in Australia. So I started off at A and just started sending off chapters for the book, and I got to A&A Publishing, so I didn't have to go too far, and they said they'd publish it. So so I took them up on that opportunity, and it sort of went from there.
Fantastic. Well, tell me, getting that book out there, what changed for you? Because I've spoken to a lot of authors over the years. What changed for you once you got that book in front of people?
It really developed momentum beyond what I was expecting. So after we had the launch, the next month it was the Money Management Book of the Month. It was picked up in a number of national newspapers and reviewed. I was featured in the weekend magazine down here. It sort of resulted in a number of speaking engagements. It was we ended up doing a second edition. So we probably ended up selling around 16,000, 17,000 of them, which was exceeded my expectations, really.
What are we talking about in terms of new business?
It certainly was a very significant factor in enabling me to sort of reinvent myself and really attract a wider audience than you would otherwise ordinarily expect. So you would get you'd be contacted from commentators from mainland newspapers for comment on various issues. You'd have emails from people all around the country that you didn't know, asking you for your thoughts on financial matters. Obviously, you need to be a little bit careful just responding via email, but it just really developed legs of its own, and things have taken off from there, really.
So, Charles, my old mate Andrew Griffiths talks about a book being a glorified business card for the small business owner. He uses the analogy of when you're sitting at the boardroom table in front of a new prospect, you're sitting alongside your competitor. The competitor hands over a business card, you hand over the book. You know who's going to get the business. It's
certainly a very powerful tool. And I really try to sort of think outside the square in terms of how I would promote that book. I actually purchased a book called, which for the girls who wrote the 4 Ingredients book. Oh, yeah. It's actually how to write a bestseller. So I read that, which was quite interesting, and it sort of explains some of the outside the square sort of concepts you need to think of. So one of the things which I did was donate a copy of the book to every school in Tasmania for the library, and also a copy for the Parents and Friends Association.
Oh,
so what
clever.
I'd do, I'd go along and pop along to the school and talk about the 10 common financial mistakes made by young people. And then I'd go along to a Parents and Friends evening and talk about common financial mistakes made by parents.
Oh, that's clever.
And then they would actually sell the book, and the proceeds would go through to the Parents and Friends Association. But it was certainly a pretty significant driver of new business.
So that was kind of effectively the marketing of your book, was you sending a copy to every school and then to every Parents Association, and then actively following it up, trying to get the opportunity to present to that group of people, to the parents?
Yeah, I'd present to the students and then to the parents.
Yeah, wow. Because not easy getting into schools, so how did you do that, besides giving a free book away?
Yeah, I suspect it's probably easier in a smaller state than perhaps New South Wales or Victoria. Right. Once you've got into a couple, and you're actually providing them with compelling content, I mean, it's not, for most people, when you talk sort of financial services, it's like watching grass grow. But you really needed to use practical examples and really talk down to their level, so they actually walk away more knowledgeable than when they walked in.
So from a message point of view, just as an aside, you often deal in stories as opposed to, facts and figures?
Oh, very much so.
Much easier to get the point across. So, okay, now tell me, I want to talk about how you now utilise some of the newer mediums, your YouTubes and your blog, and you've got ebooks and then your various social channels. Before we do that, I'm keen to understand, you work for Shadforths. You are an employee of of Shadforth Financial Group, which I'm guessing is one of the largest, if not the largest group in Tasmania.
Shadforth is basically a collection of businesses that merged back in 2008.
Right. So what I was going to say was, therefore, how you're off building your brand, the Charles brand, but you're working for Shadforth. How does that dynamic work?
It's an interesting dynamic. I've certainly been given a lot of sort of leverage to do that, and certainly Shadforth does benefit from that. I do a lot of public speaking, and most of it is under the Shadforth brand. So I'm a shareholder principal of Shadforth, so it works well for both parties.
It's a bit like the Bernard Salt. I think he's at KPMG, isn't it, where he's off doing his own thing, but it always does. It seems to be a two-way street. Both brands benefit. Yeah,
and certainly Shadforth has been very supportive on some of my initiatives, and I've helped a lot of the other advisors sort of come up to speed with the social media and sort of using that as leverage.
Love it. Now, Charles, let's get stuck into some of these channels. So I'd like to talk about video first. You've got a great YouTube channel and you're off. Maybe if you could explain to the listeners how you use video marketing.
Well, I think video is a very powerful forum. I mean, it highlights sort of your personality and your general demeanour. So they often say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, I'd argue that a video is worth 10,000. So what I try to do on the YouTube channel is really help people. So whether it's putting client education videos on financial issues that may touch them, it might be with third-party professional interviews, for example, on family trust, testamentary trusts. I also have a section on there in relation to client testimonials. So when people ring up and they'll say, Charles, who do you act for? And I say, well, what I'll do, I'll send you through the link, which outlines some of the people which I act for, and this is what they have to say. And then sort of tend to use it to update any issues as they arise. For example, the federal budget, marketing, markets might be quite volatile. Tax planning coming up to the end of June. So those kind of videos I tend to host as unlisted videos on YouTube.
Right.
So just the clients tend to see those ones.
So you're underrating your video performance here, because I'm looking at your channel. I've watched a few of your videos, Charles. You've got, for example, your 2013 federal budget summary. You did standing knee deep in water with gumboots and a suit on. You talk about demystifying the death process. The opening frame is you walking amongst some empty coffins in the back of a funeral parlour. There's some really big ideas in these videos. They're engaging. They make you want to watch. And what I like is too, they're not, again, whilst the ideas are big, they're not Hollywood productions, because what you do is after opening up and that nice little kind of intro, you then go to a series of slides and get your point across.
Yeah, I think it's really important to actually engage the audience in the first 10 seconds. So I try to have a very powerful opening. At times I try to use professional humour. Some would say not very successfully, but I try.
What's professional humour?
Like the federal budget one where you're standing in your gumboots in the water talking about being all at sea when it comes to the federal budget.
Right.
Or, comments like that. So.
Yeah, great. So now the other videos, because I remember you talking last week, I want to understand how you go and produce these, because one of the things that I know for sure is that small business owners, they're all thinking about doing this kind of content marketing, but the actual taking of action, making it happen is difficult. So you mentioned a couple of things last week when you spoke at this conference. One was that you've got a tripod with a little camera sitting on your desk. How do you use that?
It's very powerful. So if something happens on a particular day or a particular issue, I'll just use a tripod and actually record into the camera, then upload it to YouTube or Vimeo, and then send it out as a link to clients. So it actually enables you to get the message out to clients before they see the news that night.
Yeah.
It doesn't take long, but it's a really powerful tool, particularly because most people are time poor, and it enables you to actually get the message to them in 30 to 45 seconds. Whereas if you send them a 4 or 5 page letter, they're not going to read it.
So tell us, I'm going to get specific here. What kind of camera are you literally? Well, first of all, what kind of camera? He looks across.
It's cost me. I should actually have it in front of me, Tim, but it cost me the grand total of $180 from Ted's Cameras Online.
Right. Okay.
And I've started it as issues arise potentially if an idea comes into my head when I'm walking home, for example.
Yep.
I may use my iPhone or iPad as well. So, the quality on both of those are pretty good now as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. So now when you record those little client, almost like video newsletters, you literally, what do you record into? Straight into YouTube, or you're recording into a third-party piece of software?
You record into a third-party piece of software, then you upload it to.
So what are you recording into?
Normally the camera or the iPad or the iPhone.
Okay, so like, are you into iMovie?
Yeah, I just use the camera facility in the iPad.
Yep.
For example, and then upload it.
Okay, so no editing, straight up to YouTube.
Depending on the type of video you're doing.
Yes.
So if it's an update on issues, it's normally just straight up. With some of the others, there tends to be a bit of editing. You find some of your subjects, as you probably would, Tim, that are not as comfortable on video as what perhaps I am.
Yep. So, okay, got that one. So what about now? The other thing you do is you do employ a camera, a production company, sound camera guy and an editor where, correct me if I'm wrong, but once every month you just get out there and squeeze off 10 short videos like the one of you standing in the water or at the funeral parlour?
Yeah, I normally do it about every 3 months.
Right.
So I normally allocate a day to it and get up pretty early and go. It's a pretty solid day, so we normally work from sun up till sundown. We have the locations selected. I have a rough idea in terms of what I'm going to say, and I have a camera guy, and a bit like Superman, I have the 10 suits in the car and get changed for each one, so I don't look the same in all 10 videos. But yeah, and then I have an editor that actually puts it all together for me.
Okay, so you do a bit of pre-work. You go, okay, I got 10 videos today. There's 10 different things I want to hit. So it could be, it could be a point about demystifying, what was it? Demystifying the death process, or doing the 2013 federal budget summary, or it may well be interviewing some people about a particular issue.
Yeah, certainly to actually make the day as productive as possible, because you're paying for a camera, guys. You've got to actually prepare. You've got to prepare your location, prepare your introduction. And really know what you're doing, and over time it gets easier. So, for example, when I do the filming, I don't film outside in the afternoon because there's a sea breeze blowing, so it affects the sound, and you pick up these sort of tricks as you go along.
Yeah, okay. So at the end of that day, you've then got, it results in about 10 videos that you share throughout the course of the next 3 months?
Yes, I tend to distribute them from time to time as issues arise. I try to be a little bit ahead of the wave in terms of an issue.
So and then you've got to go away and in your own time film using what, ScreenFlow or Camtasia, your slide decks. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually send those through to the editor as well. I've actually had them pre-prepared, and I send those through and he puts it all together for me. Yeah,
right, okay. So, Charles, do you mind if I ask you roundabout what you pay to get 10 videos produced like that?
This is going to actually surprise you on the downside, I reckon, here, Tim. Each video costs around $250.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. And I'll put a couple of links in the show notes, listeners, to examples of these videos, and you'll see the quality of them, and they're fantastic. And I think what's important to highlight here is that, and not in all of them, but in some of them, there is an idea. There is an idea, and I think that's really clever. In fact, I couldn't find it on your YouTube channel. Maybe it's not up yet, but you talked the other day about having one where you're standing in your suit on a diving board about to jump.
I haven't put that one up yet, Timber. So
we won't tell anyone about that. What was the idea behind that?
Again, you've got to have a very powerful start, and that was talking about taking the plunge into retirement.
That's right. Yeah, love it. Well done. I love that whole. You've nailed your video marketing. A mix of education, interviews, news updates. Well done on that. So let's move on to some other content marketing that you're doing, Charles. You've got a blog.
Yeah, I've got a blog. I do. That's been an interesting process. I've traditionally written a lot of articles for magazines. So when I first started writing the blog, I'd just do it like I was writing a magazine article, and probably wasn't getting a lot of traction.
What do you mean by that? Because that's interesting. So do you mean they're more longer copy?
Yeah, perhaps longer, a little bit more serious.
Yep.
There's not as much. The language is probably a little bit more formal.
Yep.
Whereas when I started writing personal experiences and perhaps lowering the tone of the language a bit, I've tended to get a little bit more traction on that.
Yeah, okay. So that blog, now, what we haven't mentioned is that all this information lives on your personal website, which I call your personal brand website, if you like. So Charles Badenac, BADENACH.com, listeners. This blog, your videos, all lives on your personal website. So how often are you blogging, Charles?
I used to do it every week. Now I try to do it every 2 weeks, 10 to 14 days.
Yeah, that's reasonable. And do you have? We talk a lot on this show about having an editorial mission, sort of a fence around what it is you can talk about and what it is you can't talk about. Do you have that sort of in mind as to what it is, where you can go and where you can't go?
Well, I try to have a fairly consistent theme in everything I do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about providing self-help financial information or inspiring content. So I don't know whether you actually saw the video, but there's one of the videos is a guy, it's a client's story, a fellow by the name of Mark Lezick. He invented the the prosthetic arm. He re-engineered it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he takes his arm off mid-video at about the 1 minute 49 mark. So make sure you're not having dinner then, Tim. But it's a fascinating story. And Google Stories ended up doing a video on him, which has had about 4 million hits. So
now tell me, that's a video. Is that in your? I'm looking at your blog now. Is that a blog that you've done or a video?
It's a video.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll look out for that one. But you've been quite prolific in your blog. Again, I'll put a link in the show notes to that. So that's your blog. Once every couple of weeks is what you're doing there. You've got your book. You've got your books. You've got your video. Any thoughts of podcasting in the future, Charles?
I haven't as yet. I'll see how I go. You've been very good at it, Tim, but I'm not sure. Not sure financial planning and service would have the same appeal as marketing. It probably cause people to crash if they're driving the car.
Well, I'm going to challenge you on that. Suffice to say, I'm just going to apologise right now, listeners, because this Skype line is a tough one, but we're going to stick at it because there is marketing gold dripping through the phone line, but it is tough. So just stick with us, guys. That comment about, you say, well, why would you go podcasting for financial services? People are going to crash their car. But I could say, well, why on earth would you video or blog or write books about it? I don't agree. I think you'd be fantastic at podcasting. And I think one of the things that podcasting is going to allow you and not anyone who podcasts, it means people can listen to you in the car or when they're commuting or in the train or at the gym or in bed or whenever. I get letters from listeners all the time to that effect. And, with your books and your videos, you have to be leaning in. You actually have to, you can't drive and watch a video or read a book. So, I don't know, mate, I would reconsider your lack of podcasting, Charles.
Well, for a marketing guru like you, Tim, I probably should then.
You've been told. You have been told. So, I want to talk social now. But have we missed? Is there any other areas where you're creating and sharing content?
I use a lot of the other platforms, so like Facebook, LinkedIn.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's
Pinterest,
social.
all of those as well. So
yeah, it's an interesting distinction. There's social media and then there's content marketing. I think social media is an opportunity to share content, but it's also like pure content. You put content direct to those social channels, or you create content on your blog, on your video, with your podcast, with wherever it is, and then you share it through the social media channels. And that's kind of how I tend to look at it, because the stuff that we've talked about so far, you own that 100%. Right, but you don't own if you're uploading directly to Facebook or Pinterest or wherever. My view is those things can change any time, and we lose control. We never have control, in fact. So anyway, let's talk social. You're on a lot of different channels. You are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, Pinterest. Very active on Pinterest for a financial advisor kind of fella. Let's talk Pinterest. How do you use Pinterest?
Well, Pinterest having such a fast growth rate, I thought it was important to be on there, and I've really started to develop that, and it's quite interesting seeing what others pin and repin, and that's ticking along well. It's sort of a work in progress, though. It's the whole social media really is a constant learning process, and I don't think I'll ever feel as I've mastered it, really.
Join the club there. Look, let's talk. I'm looking at your Pinterest now. You have got quite a lot of pin boards. You have got goodness me, I reckon you've got 20, maybe even more. So you've broken them up. Again, it's all around financial advice, but you've got images from the GFC. You've got a personal, I won't go through them all, listeners, don't worry, but you've got personal finances. You've got a pin board about being frugal. You've got one about bull markets, bear markets, words of wisdom, fitness, budgeting tools, mate. You've really thought it out.
Yeah, I suppose it's at the time no one else was on Pinterest, but it was actually a lot of clients were talking about Pinterest and how they use it. Mm-hmm. So I thought I needed to go where the clients were.
Fish where the fish are.
Exactly. So it's still a work in progress, though, that one.
Okay. Oh, well, I mean, every one of those, everything you post is always a link back to your site. So you got to love that. Tell us about how you use Facebook. Charles, excuse me as I swallow.
Well, I try to use, in my view, people go to Facebook to be entertained. Mm-hmm. So just like a boring television program, people will turn off if you don't entertain them. So posting heavy technical content on Facebook is really like turning up to a party with a dictionary on a Saturday night and asking people to read it. They just won't.
No, unless it's an unusual party.
Yeah, exactly. So with Facebook, my objective is to really create a loyal but small community of absolutely raving fans. And I suppose I try to achieve it by trying to entertain them, using sort of personal experiences. If you look through the Facebook page, I'm not afraid to be bold or controversial. Mm-hmm. And although I don't profess to be Jim Carrey, I try to use a bit of humour as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do. Absolutely you do. And I think that I kind of do the same thing with the Small Business Big Marketing Facebook. It's where I share the lighter side of marketing, and it seems to get the most engagement. We were talking about this last week at the Social Media Down Under conference that you and I were at. And interesting, the lack of engagement. Sometimes you look at posts. I mean, I'm flicking through your posts now. It's not as if you're getting, tens or hundreds of likes, but again, it's not a reason to think no one's listening, because I'm imagining your prospects and your clients aren't the type to be liking things and commenting madly on things. They just quietly read them and move on.
Yeah, certainly. I find it very much like the iceberg effect. So what you see is just the tip. And I don't know whether there's a post on there I put on a week or so ago which talks about, my wife wants a pool. I'm happy with lawn. I thought I'd share this with you just in case you're in the same position. Well, I copped a bit of a tirade with about 8 or 9 comments on there, but we had a function last Saturday night, and would have had about 30 individual comments into me about that post. So it actually creates engagement.
Yeah, interesting. So off they've all read it, and offline when they've seen you, they're commenting there. Yeah. Yeah,
and some people you haven't even met before, and that they feel as though you actually know you. Like it's a strange feeling.
Charles, let's talk about that, because again, I want to give listeners reasons to be doing this in their own business. I talk about the fact that there is the whole idea of cold calling disappears when you create good quality content. People approach you, I get emails often, hey Timbo, I feel as though I know you, and clearly you get some similar emails. They probably don't call you Timbo, but
oh no, you certainly do. I was walking through our sort of head office 6 months ago, and one of the girls, there's now 450 odd staff at Shadforth. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys goes, the YouTube guy. And just started smiling at me. Said, oh, hi, pleased to meet you. It's and it happens a bit, but it's kind of good in a way, because people know that they know you, they know your personality. So my personality is not necessarily suited to all types of people. So it enables it to act as a filter for them as well.
Mm. And I think particularly for service-based businesses, Charles, you can't help but, people buy from people, and what you are doing with your marketing is you are establishing, you're presenting yourself, and you're establishing that contact before people actually meet you in real life. And if they do feel as though they met you, then it's surely got to make for a better initial meeting and potentially a better outcome where they choose you as their financial advisor.
Oh, very much so. I mean, it's second nature now in any professional services for someone to Google you. So if you don't have a solid Google presence, that's not a good thing. And the good thing about the online content is you actually create it, control it, and it works for you 24/7.
Yeah, absolutely. You are who Google says you are, listeners. Now let's keep going. Facebook, we've covered Pinterest. let's talk LinkedIn. How do you use LinkedIn?
Well, LinkedIn is probably one of the more important forums I use. So I use it to sort of reconnect with my former colleagues from school, university, former workplaces, also connect with new contacts. Now, I tend to be what's called, I suppose you'd call me a closed networker, in that if I don't know you or have a meaningful connection with you, then for me, you're just a name on the list. So what I try to do is target the connection. So before I accept a new connection, I'll meet that person either for a coffee or alternatively have an online discussion with them, because having a list of connections that I don't know or trust is meaningless.
Right.
So I want this niche connection list that is mutually beneficial for both parties.
So as you develop your connections on LinkedIn and you have hundreds, how are you using them? Do you actively use them, or are they just sitting there?
Well, when you've got a targeted list, it's similar to hosting a party. You don't stand in the corner and ignore everyone. You need to engage with your guests. And to do this, I engage with the connections through whether it's a direct messaging facility or some of the various groups I'm in, or liking things or endorsing them. I tend to be pretty active on that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I imagine LinkedIn would be a really important one for you. You're also pretty active on Google+. And it looks to me like you're creating dedicated content for Google+. Am I right in saying that?
I tend to, with each of the forums, I tend to post different content, because I think different content attracts different audiences. And this thing of one size fits all and posting your blog on every possible forum, I don't think that works in my view. The spray and pray kind of mentality, I think you need to be more targeted in terms of your niche groups.
So how's Google+? What role does Google+ play?
Well, Google+ is important for me, because I think that's the sleeping giant.
Oh, here we go. You heard it first. What am I missing?
Well, I think with the resources Google has, the importance of a Google ranking, its links to YouTube, Gmail, the Google Business now, which is starting to really take off, that you really need to be on that platform.
You can't ignore it. I haven't got a sense it's a sleeping giant, but, my view is I always use the phrase, you've got to tap the giant on the head, the giant being Google, and you've got to make the giant happy. So you need to be on there. But I'm waiting to be proved wrong. I had a fellow head of Joe Polizzi, who's head of the Content Marketing Institute. He thinks the sleeping giant and the most underrated social medium is SlideShare.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it's certainly one that I've been looking at quite close. And I used to have, previously with LinkedIn, where you could add those apps to your site. I actually was looking at adding a SlideShare to it, but that changed it, so I never got around to doing that.
You mean LinkedIn? You can no longer add a SlideShare app to your LinkedIn?
Yeah, I didn't think you could, mate.
LinkedIn owns SlideShare.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure. I'd be surprised you couldn't. You're creating a lot of slides. You'd be mad not to. I've been meaning to make more time for it as well, but I just haven't got around to it. Tell me, and look, the last social media channel, Charles, is the dreaded Twitter. Do you use it to find out what colour lipstick Liz Hurley's wearing tomorrow, or is there a much more important use of Twitter for you?
Well, Twitter being a constant waterfall of information, I try to use that as a update on the news, to follow global thought leaders, and distribute interesting information, but also to communicate with other professionals. And we had that conference last week, and when I have a conference, I tend to go a day earlier and try to sort of catch up with people the day before. And last Tuesday was a classic. So I sort of caught up with 5 people. I met them all through the social media, and 3 were through Twitter. So
yeah, right.
It's a pretty powerful beast. I think you need to be on there. But there is a lot of pretty average information on there if you follow the wrong people. So
yeah, that's true.
You need to use the hashtags and direct messaging and lists as well.
Charles, if you had to, if I put a gun to your head and said you've got to choose one social media channel to promote your personal brand, and you've got to choose one form of content marketing, what are they going to be? I
would use YouTube and video.
Okay, good call. Yeah, YouTube, absolutely. Social media channel. We didn't kind of talk about that, but you've populated your YouTube channel well. You're getting a fair bit of interaction on there. You've got a whole lot of playlists, so it'll be video all the way for you.
Yeah, one of the things that I also use with YouTube is I've actually got a family YouTube account. So, those moments where you might see your child riding the bike for the first time that you record on your phone. So it might be a minute or it might be 2 minutes. After I've done that, I upload it to the family YouTube account and have it as an unlisted video. So you can actually send it through. I've got a brother and sister in Hong Kong, so you send through the link there. They do similar. So it's actually not just a work tool, but a sort of a family tool as well.
Absolutely. Love it. Tell me, how much time do you spend on all this? Can you put a kind of hourly figure per week?
Well, I suppose it's a little bit of a hobby, Tim, as well. So,
okay.
I would probably spend, I would have thought probably 5 to 7 hours probably on the whole lot a week probably. So that is really the dominant theme of my marketing now. So,
and would that be within business hours or outside of business hours for you?
A bit of both, but probably mainly outside.
5 to 7, okay. And you actively, do you schedule it, or is it a kind of haphazard thing? Oh, you might be sitting down at a cafe having a coffee and writing a few tweets, and how do you actually manage it formally?
Well, I tend to schedule the Facebook, tend to schedule the Twitter. With LinkedIn, I normally do 2 to 3 posts a week there. That's when I come across compelling content. I think that's a forum where you've really got to be careful what you post on there. So it's got to be A grade. With Google Plus, I just probably do that once a week. Yeah, but it's a bit of a combination, really.
Righto. Loving this, Charles. Nearly wrapping up very shortly. Keen to understand the return on investment from all this. Have you got any examples where you've just you've written that post or you've done that video and all of a sudden you've just got all this work as a direct result from it?
Oh, well, I suppose at the end of the day, you can be as popular as you like on social media, but if it doesn't pay the bills, you have a problem.
Correct.
So, my role first and foremost is as a financial advisor and servicing clients. And what I try to do is to use the social media to leverage on that. So whether it's a client sharing some content that I've actually created or sending through something to a friend before they come and see me, that's pretty powerful. So I've had a number of instances where that has happened, whether it's been the client testimonials, whether it's been on some of the financial planning issues I've covered. There was a Facebook post which I did in relation to lost super, which a subsequent client found quite a large sum of money on, which after that they came and saw me. I've done blogs on special disability trusts, which have led to work. So it's been a pretty powerful forum for me. But I think there are people that do it well and people that don't do it well. And I think the important thing is not to be all things to all people. I mean, you need to target what you do. I mean, I'm just an average guy from a small town trying to be different.
Love it. Well, I'm going to leave it there because I couldn't have wrapped it up any better myself. So Charles Badenack from Shadforth's Financial Group in that little town called Hobart in Tasmania, Australia. Mate, thanks for sharing so much marketing gold on the Small Business Big Marketing Show.
No problem, Tim. A pleasure.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that little fireside chat with Charles as much as I did bringing it to you. Now, lots of marketing gold dripping from the ceiling there. So let me cover 3 kind of learnings that I took, although there was quite a few more. Number 1, inject an idea into your content. You know, the fact that he's talking about the most recent budget summary and everyone feeling all at sea, and he's standing there in his gumboots and a suit, knee deep in water. You know, that's a nice little idea that engages people. And then he goes on and simply presents from his slides using like a ScreenFlow or Camtasia. So that's clever in itself, having an idea that kind of makes your content interesting. Number 2, engage people in the first 10 seconds. Now, Charles was talking about video, but that applies just as equally to audio. It applies just as equally to the written word. But getting that first key message, that first interesting point out in the first 10 seconds is kind of critical. Number 3, share openly and willingly. We talked about that at the start of the interview with Charles, where, you know, he's willing to share his knowledge. Whether people are giving him money or not, he's out there creating content and sharing it openly, like I am doing with the Small Business Big Marketing Show. And like many content creators are doing, they're creating this content in order to pull prospects towards them as opposed to push them away. So Charles is ticking so many small business marketing boxes, and he's got a content marketing strategy and a social media strategy that's really, really working for him. So I encourage you to go and have a look. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link to Charles's personal website in the show notes. This is episode 145. So go to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com and you will find it there. And I'm also going to embed one of his videos so you can see that. A link to his blog, link to his YouTube channel, all the things we spoke about in that interview. So I really want you to get in there and pull it apart, see what he's doing and see how you can apply it in your business, because it's what we should all be doing. This show is called Small Business Big Marketing for a reason, yeah? It's about small businesses and small business owners doing really big marketing. So, Charles, thanks for being on the show again, and listeners, I really hope you benefited from it. Now, speaking of great marketing, the Small Business Big Marketing, the Small Business Big Marketing Forum is alive and well, and there is lots and lots of marketing discussion happening. I go in there each day and answer marketing questions, but there's also a whole lot of other things going on, and I've had a few listeners asking me what it's all about. So, well, first of all, you can go to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com and click on the forum button. You will find out exactly what's going on. I've done a little audio that details it, but there's a place where you can ask marketing questions of me and other members. There's a place where you can share your wins called the Winners Circle within the forum. There is a place called The Factory where we share productivity tools. There's a bookshelf where you can see what people are reading, what I'm reading, and comment on that. There is also a place called The Welcome Mat where you can introduce yourself and your business and do some online networking and a whole lot of other things. And in fact, one other thing that I will mention is the classroom, where I post all the content that I've created over the years, and you can have direct access to it. Keynotes I've given, webinars that I've done, dedicated webinars where I've recorded information, marketing information. It's all there on the Small Business Big Marketing Forum. It's $49 a month. That is all it is. Go to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com, click on the products page or the forum button, and you'll be in there. You'll be in there within a couple of minutes, and you can only help but improve your marketing by being a member. All right, that's it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Remember, we are brought to you by the very good folk at Net Registry who help get your online marketing sorted. I love bringing it to you. They help make it possible. May you have a wonderful week, and may your marketing be absolutely fantastic marketing. See you next week.
You've been listening to the Small Business Big Marketing Show with Tim Reid. Want more marketing goodness? Then visit smallbusinessbigmarketing.com.